Welcome to the deep dive. Today, forget the usual applause track. We're pulling out the really sharp knives for a proper rant review.
Yeah.
We're looking at Mission Impossible Final Reckoning.
The supposed big conclusion.
Exactly. And we're not just asking, was it fun? No. Did it make sense? Did it hold together? Honestly, did it respect us as an audience?
That's the core of it. This isn't just about, cool stunts. We're digging into the actual story, the logic or lack thereof, and frankly, where it all went wrong.
Holding a big franchise accountable.
Someone has to.
Okay, so let's rewind quickly. Dead Reckoning Part 1. It set up this whole thing with the entity, this rogue AI.
Right, the ghost in the machine.
It sank the Sevastopol, this high-tech Russian sub, and everything hinged on finding this two-part cruciform key.
The MacGuffin.
Ethan Hunt's mission, obviously get the key. He runs into Grace, the sort of wild card thief.
And then the big shock, Elsa Faust dies.
Yeah, a huge blow. So, part 1 ends. Ethan has the complete key. Objective seems clear. Find the sub, destroy the AI.
And honestly, that setup had promise. A relevant threat, AI gone rogue, real personal stakes for Ethan after Elsa. It felt like it was going somewhere meaningful.
Yeah, loads of potential. You had the entity's power, Ilsa's death hanging over everything, the mystery of the key.
It felt like a strong setup for a big finale. But, a great opening act doesn't always guarantee a killer finish.
Like a band starting strong and then just fizzling out. So our mission today, if you will, is to really get into Final Reckoning.
Right. Trace it back to part 1, see where the wires got crossed, basically.
We want to understand why it feels like a letdown, especially for this franchise.
Let's just say it didn't quite stick the landing.
Didn't stick the landing is putting it mildly. Okay, let's get into it. First major issue for me, this AI-worshipping death cult they introduced.
Oh, yeah, that.
We get these hints right. Street ambushes, shadowy figures. It felt like, okay, here's the entity's real-world army.
And then, poof, gone.
Exactly. It just evaporates. Like, who were these people? What was their actual plan? Who was leading them?
We'll never find out. It's just sort of there, and then it's not. No impact, no resolution. Completely dropped thread. It felt like set up with zero payoff.
Yeah.
You're left thinking, ooh, what was that about?
Seriously. And speaking of dropped things, Ilsa, her death in part 1 was massive. Huge emotional weight.
Should have been, yeah.
You'd think that would be the driving force for Ethan, the core of his motivation in this final part.
You would absolutely expect that. Her sacrifice, the impact on Ethan, the team, it should have colored everything in Final Reckoning. But from what we can tell, it's like barely mentioned.
It's almost like they forgot she was even in the last movie.
Right. It just diminishes the impact of part 1 completely. Makes Ethan's whole journey feel hollow if that huge personal loss doesn't, resonate through the concluding part.
It's baffling. And then there's another weird character thing. Right at the end, Luther's hinted terminal illness.
Oh, that felt so tacked on.
Comes out of nowhere in the finale. Again, potentially huge for a character we've known forever.
But with no buildup, no real exploration, it just lands with a thud. It feels cheap, honestly. Like a last-minute attempt to inject some emotion that wasn't earned. Another dangling thread that goes nowhere.
Okay, let's shift gears to believability, because this is where, for me, the wheels just completely came off.
Strap in.
They actually make a point of showing President Sloan the physical keys for nuclear launches, the secure protocols, trying to ground it a little.
Yeah, they show you this multi-layered, physically secured system, which is fine, good setup.
But then
the entity just magically bypasses all of it remotely.
It makes zero sense.
It completely contradicts the reality they just established. If you need physical keys and multiple human authorizations, how does software just override global nuclear arsenals? It's lazy writing.
It's like they said, see reality, and then immediately went, forget reality, we need the plot to happen.
Exactly. And don't even get me started on the submarine sequence.
Yeah, God, the submarine.
They even mention decompression sickness. They give Ethan a special suit. They acknowledge the danger.
They acknowledge it, and then they proceed to ignore every single law of physics related to it.
It's astounding. Ethan opens a hatch on the Sevastopol. It's deep, right? Pressure would be immense. We're talking maybe 20 atmospheres, maybe more.
Yeah.
Instantly going from that pressure to, say, the inside of a torpedo tube or open water. That's not a minor case of the bends.
No, that's catastrophic barotrauma. Your lungs would rupture, gases boil out of your blood. It's unsurvivable, instantly fatal.
But in the movie, he just swims away.
And the sub itself, it's treated like it's just sitting there, fully pressurized, easy to pop in and out of.
Like it's parked in a garage. not sunk under hundreds of meters of water. Real deep-sea salvage involves saturation diving, decompression chambers, complex procedures that take days or weeks.
Not just swimming up and opening a door.
It's not just unbelievable, it's insulting to basic science. They clearly knew enough to mention decompression, then actively chose to ignore it for a cool shot.
And all these problems, the dropped plots, the contradictions, the physics fails, they add up, don't they? Critics called the plot maddeningly convoluted and, well, silly.
That sounds about right. Silly's a good word.
And like a jigsaw whose pieces don't quite fit. The pacing feels off too, with all the flashbacks and whispered exposition dumps.
It feels less like organic storytelling and more like patching. Trying to fill holes with flashbacks or having characters whisper crucial information in the middle of an action scene, which just kills the tension.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, less like a clever nod and more like filler, delivered to these clunky exposition dumps. Remember this. Remember him.
It's weird. They lean so hard on old stuff while completely dropping the threads from the previous film. It suggests they didn't really have a clear plan.
And it makes the whole thing feel incredibly overstuffed. Sunken subs, rogue AIs, virus uploads, biplane stunts. It's just a checklist.
Thrown together without much thought for coherence, it honestly feels like some parts were written mid-sheet to try and connect dots that didn't want to connect.
The priority seemed to be hitting those franchise beats, not telling a solid story.
And ignoring science along the way, the mooks, the submarine physics. It's action completely untethered from reality. Spectacle over substance. And the main villain, the entity, it's just kind of there.
It's so underdeveloped. A MacGuffin placeholder is a perfect description. Flashing lights, a spooky voice.
Yeah.
Where's the actual character? The motivation beyond just be evil AI.
Right. The stakes feel weirdly low because the villain is so abstract. One review said it was like watching a 40-second YouTube ad for an AI threat.
That's harsh, but kind of accurate. It lacks presence, menace. It doesn't feel like a world-ending threat, just a convenient plot engine.
It contributes to that overall feeling of being generically procedural, like an AI wrote it, ironically.
Yeah, an AI cobbling together every franchise trope at once. Sunken sub. Check. Rogue AI. Check. Biplane chase. Sure, why not? Check.
Throw it all in, but does it make a coherent movie?
Not really. It feels bloated, stuffed with mission.
Exactly. And then the South Africa bunker infiltration.
Oh, that whole sequence. Talk about convoluted.
It was a lot. You had, stabby handoffs of data drives, betrayals that didn't feel earned, cybersecurity that seemed surprisingly easy to bypass.
It felt like they just jammed a bunch of spy cliches together.
A whirlwind, yeah, but the logic underneath was just flimsy. Right, like, let's do a heist and a betrayal and a chase without really thinking why.
Okay, so after wading through all that, the dropped plots, the impossible physics, the weak villain, the overstuffed script, where do we land? Critically speaking.
Well, from the Rant review perspective, it's hard to call it a success, isn't it? The spectacle is there sometimes. The stunts are impressive, sure.
But the story itself.
It's a mess, a significant step down from the franchise's best.
So where does it sit in the mission? Impossible ranking.
Oof. Based on this and the general disappointment, it's got to be near the bottom. Probably not quite as bad as Mission Impossible 2.
Okay, that's a low bar.
It is. But Final Reckoning is arguably making a strong case for second worst, especially after the promise of Part 1. It just feels like such a missed opportunity.
So, if you're putting a number on it, a score out of 100, what feels right?
Given everything, maybe around a 49, something like that. It captures the disappointment, the feeling of a film that has the moves but forgets the story.
Yeah, 49 out of 100 sounds about right. Moments of flash, but ultimately it just collapses under its own weight.
Exactly. The takeaway is great stunts,
Yeah.
shaky everything else, the narrative flaws, the disregard for logic. It really stops it from being a satisfying conclusion.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with something to chew on.
Yeah.
Are we seeing this more and more? Blockbusters prioritizing spectacle, huge action sequences over, stories that actually make sense.
That's a good question. Is coherent storytelling becoming secondary? And what does that mean for franchises like this one? Is it sustainable?
Where's the balance between thrilling action and a narrative that, holds together?
Definitely something to think about. How much disbelief are we willing to suspend?
Food for thought indeed. Okay, thanks for diving deep with us on this one.
Until next time.